My wife and I met at random one night while I was out with some friends at a local dive bar. We instantly hit it off. Both of us could not spend more than a few days apart, and we could not keep our hands off each other. We were both relatively young when we met. I was 22 and she had just turned 21. I hadn't had a serious relationship up to this point, and she had been in some but never engaged or married. Everything felt so natural and easy. So easy, in fact, that I told her I loved her within a month of us meeting. She was the first woman I had ever felt this way about. Luckily, this didn't scare her, and she told me she loved me too. Within a few months, we had moved into a small apartment together, and everything was amazing. We were madly in love with one another, and I could see myself spending the rest of my life with her. I am pretty traditional in the thought that marriage is something you do once, and this was something we discussed early in the relationship to avoid any rush or timelines. Although I knew I would marry her, I wanted to be absolutely sure and spend the next few years getting to know that I could spend forever with her and give her the chance to feel the same way. We got married after nearly 5 years of dating, and life had been great. I bought a modest house that we live in, pay all the bills, and provide a pretty luxurious middle-class American lifestyle. We do not have joint finances. Everything comes out of my accounts, and she can spend her $50,000 a year salary on whatever she pleases. We both drive newer vehicles, take trips out of the country, and pretty much have the liberty to buy or do whatever we like. Also, I help her pay for expensive things that she can't outright afford. So she only has a monthly car payment of about $450. In short, there is no financial strain on our marriage or lives. Dual income, no kids. The issue started about a year ago. Everything was going fine in my eyes, but I was noticing a decline in intimacy. 2 to 3 times a week for nearly 7 years had decreased to maybe once a week. I attempted to try and communicate my concern with her after a very nice night out. She quickly brushed it off as nothing, and we went about our evening. Fast forward a week or two, and she sits me down to tell me she isn't happy. She feels like she doesn't have close friends, doesn't go out enough, and that she feels stuck sitting at home with me. Although she assured me that this wasn't 100% my fault, she was feeling this way. She did clue me in on some shortcomings she felt like I could work on. This was hard to hear, as I have never been controlling about what she does or who she does it with. She goes out with friends to concerts, drinking, dinners, etc. regularly. I told her that I would make a serious effort to address her concerns, and even reached out to some of her friends to take her out for a night on my dime. She seemed to be back to her usual self after a month or so, but the intimacy continued to decline. I brought it up again, and this time it turned into the first real argument we have ever had. She surprisingly had a laundry list of things I was doing that made her not want to do anything intimacy with me. I was again pretty hurt, but made a conscious effort to address her concerns. I started drinking less, taking her out more, and hitting the home gym I had that was collecting dust. I dropped the pressure of intimacy conversations and let her decide when and what we did. This is where I messed up, and I have been dealing with the consequences since then. The intimate side of our marriage has never recovered. There has been zero infidelity on my part, but I turned to close family members for advice on what I should do to try and fix this, sparing personal details. With their advice in hand, I wrote her a long letter stating how I felt and how some of her actions were making me feel. I revised the letter several times to ensure it was not accusatory, but a way for me to get my feelings out in a constructive way without arguing. I had made up my mind that her reaction would be my path forward in handling this rough patch. Following her reading this letter, she was defensive and blamed me for her actions, or the lack thereof. I asked her to move out for a few weeks and figure out what she wanted from this marriage, as I was at my breaking point. If she wanted a divorce, fine. If she wanted to work on things, I was 100% on board. The ball was in her court. She moved in with her stepdad for about 3 weeks. During this time, we kept semi-regular communication, but only saw each other in person once. She called me and asked to get lunch to talk about what she had decided. We met up for lunch, and the first thing she said was that the time away had made her realize she can be independent, but she wanted to work on things. This kind of shocked me because the delivery felt like she was fine without me, but wanted the convenience of me being in her life. She moved back in with me, and things have been rocky since. Constant fighting, terrible communication, and zero attempt from her to address intimacy. I know it sounds like she is a terrible person and that I should walk away, but I added fuel to the fire by turning to drinking and playing video games to subdue my emotions. The drinking got to the point that I was being a mean drunk several times a week and telling her that she makes me miserable. I didn't care if I spent any time with her, and aside from cooking and cleaning together, we are essentially roommates that share a bed most nights. We started counseling a few months ago, and every session I have left feeling like a failure. I hear about how horrible of a husband I am and how the things I do or don't do make her feel like I don't care about her. We haven't had intimacy in 6 months, continue to fight constantly, and I feel like regardless of what I do, there will be a different reason why she is upset. This is where the problem lies. Through all the issues, I am still madly in love with this woman. I cannot see a life without her, and I daydream about being able to go back to the way things were. Loving her had been so easy, and I want nothing more than for us to figure out our issues and move past this. I have refused to give up and have continued making a conscious effort to show her that I care and deeply love her. It all came crashing down today when she informed me that she felt like I would never change and that she felt done with our marriage. This broke me. I sat in silence for the last half hour of the session, trying to imagine a life without her, and I can't. I am confused and heartbroken as to why she can't seem to see my efforts and the lack of her efforts to provide the same love and affection she is asking of me. I can say with 100% confidence that I do not want to call it quits, and I feel like one day we can move past this and be back to our old selves, madly in love and enjoying every day we have together. I have stopped asking friends and family for advice because everyone is just saying to get a divorce, and that is not what I want. Has anyone else ever been at this point and has legitimate advice on how to continue fighting for someone you love? Are my efforts in vain, and has her mind already been made up? I'm sure this will be buried and have little interaction, but I'm hoping someone out there has gone through something similar and can say it will get better. I want nothing more than for us to figure it out, but feel lost after today. Any helpful advice is appreciated. To add, I did not expect this to gain the traction that it did, and I now realize that regardless of the post length, I should have provided more context. I will do my best to answer comments with an open mind. You are getting a shortened story that is only from my perspective, so I apologize. But thank you to all who have commented with your opinions and facts. I do appreciate it. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I'm reading this and I'm going to straight up tell you this. Stop drinking. Can you stop drinking? I've been with a closeted and functional alcoholic who has slid down into mean drunken states. It's hell. I mean, sure, he's super sweet, always acting like a romantic person even without me prompting, making me feel somewhat safe when he's not drinking, but then boom, the mean and drunken states. It's like being with Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Scary as heck. Not going back to that state. I'd rather be alone than be in that moment again. He also didn't understand why I was so scared and tried to make it sound like I don't do anything for him while I did a lot. Only when sober does he admit it. When he's drunk or even buzzed, man, the accusations about how little I do for him and us. It's very ridiculous. You have reached the mean drunk state, so this is why I urge you to stop drinking, full stop. Also this, we met up for lunch and the first thing she said was that the time away had made her realize she can be independent, but she wanted to work on things. This kind of shocked me because the delivery felt like she was fine without me, but wanted the convenience of me being in her life. This surprised me how little you've thought of her already. I saw it as she knew she can be without you just fine, but she loves you, so she wants to work on the marriage instead of being away. Obviously, without you, despite your financial convenience, she'll be just fine. She can downsize, I believe that 100%. she'll adjust. But living with someone who's an alcoholic, even a functional one, is not that great despite your earning potential. Obviously, it's up to both of you whether or not you should stay together. If she believes that she's unhappy with the marriage, then you should let her go. Lawyer up, etc. Comment 2. Whatever love she had for you is gone. There's no such thing as if you do this, I'll love you the way I used to. She gave a laundry list of things to work on, only to give you more when you did the other things. She may have loved you once. She may even believe she loves you now, but deep down she doesn't. She definitely doesn't respect you. Next up, drinking. You're an alcoholic. Not only did it contribute to your marriage being in the crapper, but it's screwing up your better judgment. Do yourself a favor. Stop drinking. Go to Alcoholics Anonymous or rehab. And when you've been sober for a while, then look at things the way they really are, not the way you want them to be. That's the key. It's hard and no fun to look at the hard, unvarnished truth, but that's what you have to do to get out of this. You're going to find when you can really see it that you both are better off without each other. There is life after alcohol, and there will be life, a better life, without her too. Go work towards finding it. You can do it. Good luck. Now for the update. I spent the last 2 days thinking about everything that happened during the counseling sessions and how we got to this point. After our last session, my wife suggested we take a short break from each other to figure out what we need. I agreed, but felt really worried as I watched her pack a small bag with clothes. She moved in with a close friend who lived about 20 minutes away. I tried to keep busy with work and gaming, but kept checking my phone for messages. On the third day of her being gone, I got a text from her asking about our upcoming anniversary. I suggested a dinner together to talk about our situation, and she agreed but wanted to meet in a public place to keep things light. We decided on a local Italian restaurant we used to love. On the day of our dinner, I got there early and sat at a corner table, feeling anxious. When my wife arrived, she looked tense and immediately ordered a drink. Our conversation started off casual, talking about work and mutual friends. I brought up our anniversary, trying to keep the mood positive. Suddenly, she changed the topic, saying she felt overwhelmed with our relationship. I suggested we work on things together instead of apart, but she snapped back, saying I wasn't listening to her needs. The argument got worse, drawing the attention of nearby tables. I raised my voice, insisting I was doing everything I could to improve things. She threw her napkin on the table and said she needed space, storming out of the restaurant. I stayed seated, feeling the weight of the situation. After a few minutes, I paid the bill and went home, frustrated. That night, I decided to take a different approach and wrote her a heartfelt letter outlining my thoughts. The next morning, I drove to her friend's house to drop off the letter. I knocked on the door, and the friend answered, surprised to see me. She took the letter inside, and after a few minutes, my wife came out, looking conflicted. We sat on the porch, and I explained I wanted to make things work. My wife revealed she had been thinking about our future and was considering moving on. She admitted she had been spending time with someone else, but it wasn't serious. This shocked me, and I demanded to know who it was. She refused to share the name, saying it didn't matter, and we needed to focus on ourselves. Feeling cornered, I stood up and told her I wouldn't let her walk away without a fight. I proposed we take a weekend trip together to rekindle our connection. To my surprise, she agreed, but with hesitation, suggesting we should set boundaries. We quickly planned a weekend getaway to a cabin in the woods, feeling a flicker of hope. On the drive to the cabin, the atmosphere was tense but filled with a mutual understanding. We arrived, unpacked, and started preparing dinner together. I finally expressed my desire to make changes and be the partner she needed. She acknowledged my efforts and agreed to give our marriage one last chance. We ended the night by making a pact to communicate better and support each other's needs moving forward. As the weekend concluded, we felt a renewed sense of commitment, agreeing to see a new counselor together. Edit. After our anniversary dinner, I felt the need to share my side of the story and my wife's perspective. She admitted that her actions were influenced by a close friend who had recently gone through a breakup. This friend suggested exploring other options, which led to the emotional affair she mentioned. My wife realized she didn't want to give up on us entirely. The weekend getaway helped us reconnect, and we both committed to putting in the effort to heal our marriage. Am I the idiot for telling my parents to deal with their own financial mess and stop draining me? My entire life, I studied hard, worked hard, educated myself financially, and followed all the usual advice on how to build a future. I got a good executive role in the career path I wanted. It doesn't pay great, but it gives me enough that I could theoretically live a comfortable life. Both my parents are real estate brokers and own no property or vehicle. Money sometimes comes in large amounts, but usually after a big hiatus where they don't earn a single penny and just build up debt. So, everything they receive usually is burned immediately, settling loans and credit card bills. On top of that, since Infection 19, it has been downhill for my family, with a relative dying every year. My mom lost both her parents, my father lost his father last year, and now there's only my 91-year-old grandma who needs 2 nurses with her all week and a bunch of medications. So expenses have been very high. As of right now, I'm at a point where I don't go out, I only buy basic food to eat, and I don't make any unnecessary expenses. Not because I can't, but because I want to save money. I want to pay for my wife's degree, I want to buy a car, and eventually, I want to have enough for a down payment on a house. However, no matter how much I save, I still end the month in the red because there's always something my parents need help paying. I've drained my checking account, I've drained my 6-month emergency fund, and now I've drained half of my investment account. It never stops. There's always a new thing they need to pay for, and I feel awful denying them money I don't need immediately when they and my near-centenarian grandma clearly do. To add, I tried posting this in financial advice, but they suggested this would be a better place. I would greatly appreciate any wisdom you folks might have. I really wish I could be the perfect daughter who gives everything to her parents. But unfortunately, that's not the reality for 99% of the world, myself included. I've done all I could, but I have to start building my own life. How do I tell them I can't keep giving them money? I'm afraid they'll just turn on me, like they've done before. They've done some pretty messed up stuff in the past, kicking me out and trying to paint a bad image of me to all my friends and relatives when, at 21, I made a big decision they didn't like. Despite all that, I still want to see them doing well and at least give something back for raising me and giving me a good education. It took years for us to start talking to each other again and to feel like a family again. I don't want to lose that. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I had a long post written up, but I reread your post. I'm afraid they'll just turn on me like they've done before. When people show you who they are, let them. This is their power over you, and they clearly do not have issues manipulating you into doing what they want. This is the most important thing you wrote. Nothing else matters. Your parents have shown you their true colors already. You must establish the boundary for your own sake. If you don't, they'll just hold you back, and it sounds like you've got a good head on your shoulders. I'm not going to lie, it's going to be hard, and it will probably blow things up, but you can't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. People who do not understand that do not need to be in your life. Comment 2. They are being nice because you are buying a relationship with them. They know not to bite the hand that feeds or unalive the golden goose, so they are letting you be a part of their family as long as you pay up. The second you turn off the money spigot, they will turn on you. Try saying that you are broke once and see what happens. Say no once and see what happens. They love your money and want your money in the family, and since you hold the wallet, they will pretend to love you too. Additionally, I might be jaded because I read these same stories again and again, and they always have the same ending. Now for the update. I went to my parents' anniversary dinner, and it was a total mess. To recap, I was looking for advice on how to tell my parents that I can no longer help them financially without messing up my own goals. I always gave them money to help with their bills and expenses, but I'm honestly just drained. I know I sound selfish, but I can't keep doing this if I want to achieve my own dreams. 2 weeks after that post, I went to my parents' anniversary dinner at their favorite Italian restaurant. I brought my girlfriend Olivia, and my sister Kate was also there. My brother Jake and his wife Rachel showed up late because they had a flat tire, so we were all just kind of sitting there awkwardly. My dad raised his glass and gave a toast, thanking everyone for their support over the past few months. Then, Jake and Rachel announced they were expecting a baby. The whole table was buzzing with excitement. My mom suggested we take a family trip to celebrate the news, but I was quiet. I didn't have any money to go on vacation because I was broke from helping them with their bills. After dinner, I excused myself to the restroom. While I was washing my hands, I overheard my parents talking about their mortgage struggles. My dad said that they might have to sell the house if things didn't improve. I went back to the table and tried to change the subject to the baby news, but my parents kept steering the conversation back to their finances. Olivia squeezed my hand under the table and gave me a look. As dessert was served, my mom asked if I could help them with their bills again this month. I hesitated, and I finally said, "I can't help this time without messing up my plans for the future." My dad's face changed, and he shouted that I was selfish for not supporting my family. The restaurant fell silent as everyone turned to look at us. I tried to explain my situation, but my mom interrupted me, saying I had forgotten where I came from. Jake tried to mediate between us, but it only made things worse. Rachel tried to lighten the mood by suggesting we take a family photo, but it was too heavy in there. I stood up and told everyone I needed fresh air, and I stepped outside for a moment. Olivia followed me and asked if I was okay, but I told her I just needed space. After a few minutes, I went back in to find my family still arguing. At that point, I just wanted to get out of there, so I left the restaurant, taking Olivia with me. As we walked to the car, I heard my dad yelling that I was abandoning them. I drove home in silence. Later that night, my parents texted me saying they were disappointed in my lack of support. I responded, saying I needed a break from the financial burden. The next day, I got a call from my grandma, who was upset about the fight. I assured her that I would handle things. A few days after that, I met with a financial advisor to discuss my situation. The advisor suggested a plan to help me save for my family's needs while maintaining my own goals, which were to save for my wife's education, a car, and a house down payment. I shared the plan with Olivia, and she agreed it was a good direction. I decided to present this plan to my parents during our next family dinner. At the dinner, I calmly explained my financial boundaries and shared the advisor's plan with them. My parents listened, but they were really defensive at first. I stood firm, emphasizing my commitment to family while prioritizing my future. After a long discussion, my parents began to understand. We reached a compromise where I would help them with a smaller amount for the next few months. This experience has been a real eye-opener for me, and I hope it stays that way. Mini update. My siblings have been supportive since the dinner incident. They understand my need to step back financially and have offered to help our parents more. Our relationship is still recovering, but communication is improving. I've been focusing on my goals and feel more confident in my decisions for the future. Am I the idiot for confronting my wife about her study session with another man after she pushed for an open relationship? I met my wife back in 2018. I had just dropped out of college, and she had just started at the college I dropped out of. The beginning of our relationship was fantastic. We did everything together. We would go out on dates, our bedroom life was amazing, and we spent virtually every moment that I wasn't working and she wasn't at school together. In all of her previous relationships, she had been cheated on within 3 months, so I wanted to make sure that she knew I didn't have eyes for anyone else, nor did I ever give any impression that I would be unfaithful. I was committed to her 100%, and she loved and appreciated that. Due to some financial difficulties, I was hopping between jobs because I was making poor choices. I ended up deciding that it would be in the best interest of our future to join the military. I was overweight at the time and had to lose 60 pounds, which I did in 8 months. She was my rock and my reason, and she motivated me to get it done so I could give her the best life. Fast forward, and I get orders to an overseas base where I've been for the past 3 years. She stayed back in the United States to go to nursing school. I had no issue with this since she is a very motivated person, and I wanted to see her succeed. The first year was great. We called every single day, and there were quite literally no issues. After a year of being at my current base, I went back home for our wedding. This is where the issues began. Quite literally, within the first hour of getting to our apartment, she tells me that she wants to try an open relationship. This took me completely by surprise, but I told her I wanted absolutely nothing to do with something like that. She laid out the ground rules for it: no intimacy whatsoever, no physical contact, just dates and companionship, and I still wanted nothing to do with that. She said she would drop it, and she did for a few weeks. We had our wedding ceremony, and it was very nice, and I thought that would be the end of it. The night before I left to come back to my base, she tells me again that she wants the open relationship, and I refuse again. She told me that we can talk about it when I was ready, but I knew I never wanted to talk about it, so I never brought it up. A few months later, she brought it up again, this time pressing it even more aggressively than before. I continuously said no. After about 2 to 3 months of her constantly asking, I finally got tired and reluctantly agreed. She seemed thrilled, but I made sure to voice my frustration, to no avail. The next 6 or so months went fine for the most part. Then in October 2023, she had a full-on mental breakdown. To this day, I'm still not sure what caused it, but that led to even more issues. We had decided that I would come back home in December 2023 to spend Christmas together. But due to the mental episode, she told me that it would be better if I didn't come home. I was rightfully very upset, as I already had the plane tickets and everything, and told her that I could help her get through whatever she was going through, but she was adamant about me not coming. I ended up spending Christmas with my mom, who lived in a different city. When I got home, she barely talked to me. There was barely any texting and virtually no calls. She had told me that she was feeling suicidal, so I told her parents what was going on, and they blew up at her. She ended up getting extremely angry at me, telling me they have no right to our lives and our relationship. While I agree to an extent, they are in much closer proximity to her than I am, so I felt they would be the best to help take care of her. I ended up going back to my base in January, not seeing her at all. She began to communicate a little more, which I took as a good sign and was very relieved. In February, I was sent on a work trip, and one day she began leaving my texts on read and not responding to anything. I also noticed she deleted virtually all of her social media, which was odd because she was very active all the time. Naturally, I became very worried. Like I had said, she had told me she was very suicidal months prior. So I ended up calling her dad in the middle of the night to see if he could check up on her and make sure she was okay. He told me she wasn't at her apartment and was nowhere to be found. At that point, I started calling frantically because I was genuinely worried something had happened. She finally answered and said that she was staying at a friend's house since they were studying. It was a friend that I knew. But she blew up on me again because I had included her parents yet again. I explained that due to her previous worrying comments and my being overseas, I felt it was more than reasonable to ask her dad to check up on her because it was either him or the police. She didn't care for anything I had to say and continued to blow up on me. About 2 months later, things started improving little by little. We ended the open relationship. We started talking a little more, and it felt like we were getting back to normal. Then she stopped responding for days at a time. In June, I finally had enough and told her that our marriage wouldn't work if she refused to communicate with me. I said that we would be miserable until one of us decided to break it off for good. She agreed, and since then we've been improving immensely. We call more often, text every day, steadily getting back on track. I then found out that I would be going to another overseas base. Now for an update. I leave later on this year, and this past week she told me that due to her starting residency for nursing, which starts at the exact same time I will be on leave in between moving, time I had planned to spend with her, it would be better for us and for her if I didn't come visit. She said she wouldn't be able to be present for me 100%. And since we're in a rebuilding phase of sorts, she said that we need to be able to be there for each other 100%. And she can't give me that. So she said it would be better if I went with my mom. She said she would take a few weeks and visit me at my next base so we could be together. I told her that it was ridiculous to expect us not to start with the little things first. I could keep the apartment clean, ensure the dog is taken care of, and make sure she doesn't have to worry about the apartment at all for the first 2 weeks. I explained that we haven't seen each other in nearly 2 years, and it is unrealistic to expect us to fix things in 2 weeks, so we need to start small in rebuilding our relationship. She completely disregarded how I felt and refused to see my point of view on the matter. My main issues are these. I haven't seen my wife in nearly 2 years because she's told me not to visit for one reason or another. I've paid rent on the apartment she's lived in for the better part of 2 years, and I don't feel welcome in my own home, and I'm constantly neglected regarding how I view our situation. Almost forgot. I'm open to any and all advice you all are willing to give me. What should I do? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Dude, please divorce. She has asked for an open relationship so that she could cheat without feeling guilty. She has probably been emotionally invested in some guy for months and wanted him. Also, I feel this is more common than you realize. When a partner is away the majority of the time, it can be incredibly lonely. I can kind of see both sides, but she is living her life at your expense. Move on. If she wanted you, she would have made an effort. Comment 2. Maybe she has a reason for not wanting you to visit her. What wife does not want to see her husband if he has been away? If she were your wife, she would want to see you even if it was for a few minutes. Have you thought about who she is hiding by telling you not to visit her? The fact she has also deleted her social media is another red flag. I am sorry to say, but she is with another guy now. Now, for the update. There have been some things that have happened in the last couple of days. I called my wife after not hearing from her for nearly a week. She usually picks up immediately, but this time it rang once and went to voicemail. I left her a message asking her to call me back when she could. Later that evening, she texted me saying she was busy with school and couldn't talk. I tried to keep it light, asking about her classes and how she was settling in, but she only gave me short answers and clearly wasn't interested in chatting. I spent the weekend packing my stuff for the move to the new base. My mom called to check in and asked about my relationship, to which I just told her things were complicated. She suggested coming over for dinner, which I accepted to take my mind off everything. At dinner, I mentioned my wife's residency and how she wanted space. My mom frowned and said that didn't sound right, given how long we'd already been apart. The next day, I went to the grocery store and ran into my neighbor, who asked how my wife was doing. I mentioned she was busy with nursing school, and my neighbor raised an eyebrow. They casually mentioned seeing my wife at a coffee shop with someone else last week. I decided to look into it, but told myself I wouldn't jump to conclusions. I called a local coffee shop, asking if they had security footage from last week. They agreed to let me check it out, since I lived nearby, so I headed over. Watching the footage, I saw my wife sitting with a guy I didn't recognize. I decided to confront her in person rather than through text. I drove to her apartment, knowing I might find her there. When I arrived, I noticed her car parked in the lot, but she wasn't inside. I waited for about half an hour before she finally pulled in. I approached her as she got out, asking if we could talk. She seemed surprised to see me and hesitated before agreeing. We went inside, and I sat her down, asking about the coffee shop. She looked confused at first, but then tried to brush it off as a study session. I pushed her for details, and she admitted meeting a classmate, but it was nothing more. I pressed her about the tone of their interaction, and she got defensive. I told her I had seen the footage, and she went quiet. I suggested we find a way to work through this together, but she seemed uncertain. Before I left, she asked if I could give her some time to think about everything. I agreed, but told her I needed honesty moving forward. As I was leaving, she mentioned she would be at a family gathering next weekend. I decided to go to the gathering to see how things would play out. Edit. I attended the gathering and spoke with my wife. She told her family I was visiting, but we acted normal. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.